It's time once again for everybody's favorite show, the PATC. What is this? The toy mill, right? This is the news segment of our
Yes, the rumor mill,
podcast
the toy
show.
mill, because a bunch of old white bald guys couldn't come up with a better name than the toy mill instead of rumor mill. But it's a great news segment.
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of stuff that happened in the last what we haven't done this in like 2 weeks or so. But I know a couple of things have happened. But the major thing for me that I wanted to point out was the Hasbro Pulse Indiana Jones version of it, right? So that just happened, and they showed some new figures. They showed where the line's going to go in the next year, which is pretty exciting. So we get some more additions to the retro line, which we knew was going to happen. So at an earlier Hasbro Pulse, they showed the Indiana Jones, which of course we pre-ordered, right? That's
Oh,
that's
yeah, two.
yeah, that was a no-brainer. But then they showed now that we're getting right, we're getting Marion, we're getting Sala, we're getting Belloc, we're getting what's his name, Toph,
Nope.
right?
Uh-huh. And we're
Um,
getting the German mechanic.
yeah, we're getting a German. So first, Indy's got to have somebody to beat up. So got to give him a Nazi. Um, but then there's also they showed some more 6-inch stuff that's coming out. So the Indiana Jones line. It looks like Hasbro is starting to wake up to that, which really makes me happy because growing up, Indiana Jones was just as big as Star Wars, right? Just as big as Star Wars, Transformers, GI Joe. Indiana Jones was right there. So
Yeah.
to have these toys make a comeback, and especially the retro line make a comeback, that makes me very happy.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this day and age when they're targeting us to
Mm-hmm.
buy this stuff, the one thing I would have never, ever in a million years suspected would be that they went back on the old Kenner molds and started re-releasing them. So when we saw that Indiana Jones with the whipping action, and the whip is awful,
Oh,
right?
it's horrible.
It's like this thimble with a string that comes out.
Yeah,
But
like Beastman.
he had a gun though that actually went into the holster. If I recall,
I think
I
he
have one
still
on the shelf
does.
back here.
He's
But
in this reissue. I think he does.
yeah, so we're getting that, but not only him, but I mean, we're getting a full run of the figures. And we're getting a carded Belloc, who was a mail order figure. You
Yep.
never had the chance to get that guy. He was a proof of purchase thing to mail in. I don't know why that line didn't take off better. Or
I
Kenner.
think it had to do with supplies and distribution back then.
Yeah, I mean Kenner did that line, and then it went over to LJN, and they were like a 5-inch figure, and they only made three in that line. So I mean, you have like this mega popular Indiana Jones, and it's super underserved off of these four or
Well,
five figures.
I think it has to go with it's the same thing for the licensing that Star Wars had with Kenner, right? So they had to have a certain they had to sell a certain amount or pay Kenner a certain amount in order to retain those licensing. And I don't know if the Indiana Jones brought in that much money in order to hold on to that licensing. Because
Yeah.
when Star Wars did their license when they did it with Kenner and all that, Kenner got the best deal on that, right? So I don't think that Lucasfilm recreated that deal for Kenner, and I think they went a little bit more towards Lucasfilm getting the better end of that, and I think that that's why it died quickly because they couldn't meet those licensings.
Yeah, it could be. Have you ever seen those, Tony? They're on like a yellow card and they have like this really like diaper crotch kind of a look to them. The articulation cuts are so that when you put them on the horses, the legs kind of they're not like Star Wars that kicks straight up and down. They kind of spread out as you move the legs forward. Um, man, I always wanted them,
Yeah,
and now we're getting that full line of those Kenner style retros. So that was pretty big news for me.
it's
I
very
was
big
like,
news.
where do I pre-order?
Yep.
But
Yeah. So
they're
they
being
haven't
coy
they
about
have
it.
not put up a link yet for a pre-order, but they said that that's coming soon. So I'm expecting the normal sellout as soon as things hit the. So you got to be quick on those, unless they're making them to order,
So,
which would be good.
but Hasbro has been really, really good, right? Those indies are still available for pre-order.
Okay.
Sergeant Slaughter, when we thought we weren't going to get another shot and like sell out in minutes, and then they put up a second pre-order that comes through, and I mean that's a plenty. So everybody that wanted one can get one.
Mhm.
So I do have a feeling that Hasbro they're doing the right thing on this. I wish they would do it for that O-ring Stinger, but
Mhm.
so far they haven't done a reissue on that. But
Oh, they need to bring that one back.
Yeah, so they're doing a great job. I was super excited to see that too. I didn't get the live feed, but I got pictures a little bit later in the day and was like, okay, that's it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
That's it.
all they really had to say was that they were bringing more Indiana Jones to the retro line, and I would have already been sold. I mean, they didn't need to say much more than that. Um, but the figure molds look almost exactly like they did back in the day. So just like
Yeah,
the Star Wars retro with the Star Wars molds that they have, like near indistinguishable from the figures that were back in the day. And so the card back is a little bit different than the original, which is good, which is how they did it with Star Wars to kind of differentiate. Um, but the only thing I have to ask after this is where the hell am I going to put him? Like I gotta buy him,
uh,
but I don't have any shelf space for him, so I got to figure that out.
I don't got another 4 feet of retail racking. I don't got the room for it. Unless I take the 400 square foot addition that we're putting on for my wife's office and she gets to be in this little like 10 by 11 room that I'm in here.
Tell her you're altering the deal. Pray you don't alter it any further.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, equally excited about that news. What else you thinking about there?
That was the big one that I had. The NECA War Duke has been shipping. People have been getting that, which is a phenomenally awesome looking figure, and I cannot wait. My pre-order still is in pre-order status, so it's been in pre-order status for the last year, almost year and a half. So we'll see. But some people have started to get them, and they look really good.
Yeah, I saw a side by side with the original figure, and it amazed me how much bigger and more detailed it was. Um, are you familiar with the War Duke, Tony? He's got like this bat helmet thing and like red eyes. He's not a D&D cartoon character. Or originally wasn't. He's actually a character from probably like second edition.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, do you remember those Dungeons and Dragons figures from LJN?
yeah.
So we watched the cartoon, and none of the cartoon characters were available except like Strongheart, maybe Warduke cameoed.
Yeah,
But they went on and made a really great line of Dungeons and Dragons based figures. Um, but they never did any cartoon characters. But Warduke is like, it's like when you think about Ghostbusters, you think about Slimer. When you think about D&D figures, you think about the Warduke figure because he was probably the best figure in the whole line.
mhm.
And NECA, which is a high-end action figure maker, just knocked it out of the park. But they've kept poor Doug waiting like a year and a half on the pre-order. So
I remember as soon as Steve and I found out about it, I was like, I gotta go get it. I gotta go get it.
yeah,
And then they had, shipping in like September of 2022, or no, shipping in July of 2022. And then they kept pushing it out to September, to December, to January. It just kept going further and further out. So
well, there's some news to dovetail with that though. Super 7, who makes the reaction figures, uh, have the rights to do figures based on all the old D&D characters that appeared in the books. So Super 7, they make these like old school Star Wars looking figures. There's 5 points of articulation. They're not very detailed, but for certain lines like Aliens or something that never got a figure release, it kind of makes sense. It's got a lot of nostalgia to it. So we're going to be seeing some Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Super 7 at some point, probably going to be announced in the next like 4 or 5 months. They'll show some renders, but that's really cool. Dungeons and Dragons
are they going to
news
make them
also.
based off of the art that was in like the player's
Yes.
handbook and stuff like that? So are we going to get the whatever that knockoff creature was that was in Conan the Destroyer that showed up on that one page? You remember that? No, was that the monster manual? No, it wasn't the monster manual. What was it where it had the reflection of the creature, and the artists back in those days were just pulling everything they could off from anything. They didn't care, right?
Yeah. What do you remember which book that came out of, Tony? The guy that when Conan goes into the castle and he fights Tothamon and he turns into like that gorilla lizard professional wrestler.
There's a full-on picture. I think it's in the player's handbook. I've got to find it. I think it's in the player's handbook.
I'm
But
intrigued. I'm intrigued. I've got to find this.
it's it's like a close-up of his face, and I remember back in the day opening that book, going, "That's Conan. What is he doing?" Or that's the creature from Conan.
Well, it's like when in that Palladium second edition book with the guy that looked just like Mad Mardigan, but he had an earring.
Okay, I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So you intrigued me with all of your discussion about this Super 7 website. So I'm here right now, and why does Snake Eyes have a harpoon and a net, and why does Duke have a lightsaber?
Because don't ask questions.
Okay, so I'll answer that. So Super 7 is doing 3 3/4 inch Joes, but they're doing them in like that old school Star Wars style.
Okay.
And they're able to get really specific. So those weapons that they have are episode specific, and it'll explain it on the back of the packaging.
Yep.
I could argue that the depictions of their versions of GI Joe are like totally cartoon accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you looked at the original GI Joe figures, like you know how like Flint had a black shirt and camouflage pants. In the cartoon, it was just like this camouflage from top to bottom, kind of green and brown. So Super 7's basing these figures off of the cartoons. It is super hard not to buy those, but they're like 17 or 18 bucks a piece. So
I have to tell you about those NECA figures. So I really I opened up one of them because I wanted to see what they were like, how they were made, how they handled, and things like that. So I opened up the Storm Shadow one I had.
uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And so his legs and his arms move, and everything is cool. But in true NECA fashion,
It's Super 7.
or Super 7, sorry, Super 7. So okay, the accessories were like really brittle, and I tried to put his sword in his backpack that comes pre-molded on his back. Snap, right off the bat. Like, just didn't even get to do anything with it. It's just, oh, let me put this in his, oh nope, that's broken now.
What? You play with toys?
Yes.
They should be in a museum.
I'm just saying, leave them in the package.
But they look really cool on card, Tony. You pass by them at Target, and I mean, like it just screams old school GI Joe. I of course have the Duke from Super 7, but I am not dumb enough to take it out of the package and watch it just like disintegrate.
Well, I opened up Storm Shadow, and now he has no swords.
Well, what do you say? So I have a few things to talk about that I found pretty interesting. There's a big rumor right now, and this is just in rumor stage. We're talking about GI Joe. The next Transformers and GI Joe crossover, where they make the GI Joe scale vehicle that turns into a Transformer, is going to be Sergeant Slaughter packed in with an O-ring Sergeant Slaughter figure on vintage card.
There's gonna be a triple T.
Yeah, that's the rumor. That's the rumor that it's
So
the next crossover.
So Hasbro's really trying to do something with those Sergeant Slaughter rights that they have, right? Like, they're not going to let that go to waste.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. I mean, they really need to get as much as they can out of it, because at some point he will sign back with WWE on some kind of a Legends deal contract. And what that means, like right now, is that Mattel would produce product and they're all going to be based off of his wrestling. But, you know, we're finally got that 6-inch Sergeant Slaughter that just like knocks it out of the park. We knew that it was just a matter of time until we saw the vintage O-ring style figure, but just didn't know what it was going to be. So
have you seen that, Tony? Have you seen the Sergeant Slaughter like that we're talking about? This guy is just,
Oh, no, I have never seen that.
look at that guy.
Fun fact, I hate Sergeant Slaughter.
What?
Worst.
I think you broke Steve.
I'm sorry, I don't like Sergeant Slaughter.
it's okay. It's okay. He's not like a legit military guy. He was cool on the cartoon.
No, he's only cool in the cartoon. That's it.
I'm not a Sergeant Slaughter fan. In fact,
Sergeant Slaughter in real life looks like he ate Sergeant Slaughter from the cartoon.
I think
I love him. I love him. But okay, so
I
they come on. Yeah, have you seen the new Retro Joes, Tony? They're like an O-ring style figure. I'll see if I can slide one out here. You see that okay?
Yeah.
So they come on like this retro style card. They're on the bubble. The actual figures themselves are like O-ring figures. They're reproduced very, very faithfully based on the old molds. And they've been releasing them in waves of 2 for the low price of like $42 a 2-pack. But you know, it's what's been asked for as fans. I mean, all we wanted was Retro Joes to come back. So
And
they
that's
have been making this series of GI Joe vehicles that transform into Transformers characters, and you can actually fit that O-ring size GI Joe in there in the vehicle. So this next crossover is supposed to be Triple T Tank with Sergeant Slaughter.
Ooh, I wonder who his Transformer equivalent is going to be.
Shit, why not just make it Bumblebee again, since
Yeah.
that's what they seem to do. But we got a his tank that turns into Megatron that came with the Baroness,
okay.
and the Awe Striker, that go-kart thing that Joe likes to ride around in. It came with a stalker figure, and the green Awe Striker turns into Bumblebee for some damn reason. I can't tell you what that is. They're really neat. You see them in the store, and you're like, oh man, but it's a pass for me. I'm not interested in them. The engineering's really clunky, and they just I don't have room anyways. But I thought it was really cool that they're going to do something with Sergeant Slaughter. Another thing is the Transformers Legacy Evolution figures are starting to hit.
Mhm.
Canada's got the deluxes with that last Stunticon figure that you need, Doug.
Yep.
So they're showing up there. And I was at Docking Bay 93, which is my local comics book store here in Mount Vernon, and they actually had the Lio Convoy and Tarn, which are two like really they're very sought after figures.
Mhm.
I didn't buy Lio Convoy because of my pre-order, but I love it. I mean, it's like that's what Beast Wars Optimus Primal should have been to begin with.
Absolutely.
So it's a terrific figure. They had the Dinobot Sledge core class figures there. So if specialty retail is getting it, mass release isn't too far behind. So anybody taking a peek, they had them in stock when I left earlier today. So that was pretty neat. There's been a massive product drop at Target for GI Joe Classified. All those Tiger Force figures are hitting the shelves. Even some of the other stuff, we're seeing repeats coming back from the other waves that we might have missed out on. So like the Crimson Twins, Stalker was in there.
As long as they clear out that Snake Eyes movie crap.
It's getting there. Oh, but they had a Snake Eyes with Timber 2-pack that they released. So Snake Eyes with the visor, like the updated version. Masterverse has had a ton. That Roboto and Eva Lynn wave. Too Bad, the Road Ripper with Mechanic, and they're like filling the shelves with these. So
oh, good. I mean, hopefully ours will get them too, because ours still seems to be like 3 waves back. So hopefully we'll start to see those things.
Yeah. Do you recall the movie, the G1 toy reissues in the movie colors, the Hot Rod and
Yep. And the Starscream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are starting to hit. If you missed it, Tony, they're come in a weird box. It's not a G1 package at all. And they're kind of supposed to be like movie colors. So I found a few of them here at the Walmarts, and they're finding them in California. So that's good for the people that want them, but
yeah,
I'm not terribly interested.
So on that, I think they're going to release a G1 Hound the same way, in the movie colors, kind of muted green. That one I actually am pretty interested in. I think that one would be kind of fun to get. He would come right out of the box. Like, he wouldn't be in a box display. He would be on a shelf display.
So my issue with that is, well, for one, we've been starved of G1 reissues since Walmart kind of turned off the faucet on those when they were putting them out in the original packaging. And two, it's like an excuse just for them not to put vac metal on the figure.
Yeah.
All the accessories just come in this like drab gray plastic. So
right.
I'm really disappointed that we're going to get this awesome Hound reissue and it's not G1. They're going to stick it in some windowless box like everything's coming in now. Yeah. So I was a bit disappointed with that.
Well, I mean, it's not ideal, right? But it's still enough that I want to get that Hound. So,
and there are people out there that make repro boxes that cost you about $30 shipped to get one. So that's what I did for my Prowl. It was still cheaper doing that than buying a Chinese knockoff Prowl for like $65.
Yeah.
And I thought my hobby was expensive.
Yeah, it can be.
There.
Yeah. So, what about you, Tony? Is there anything kind of going on the gaming side over there? Anything that's sort of coming around and becoming interesting, or any controversies or anything?
Sure, yeah. There's always stuff coming out in the miniature world. One of the big ones that's been announced is Warhammer 10th edition, Warhammer 40K 10th edition. That's going to be a big one. They tend to do that every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe sooner. And so it's going to be a real interesting summer. They usually launch those in June sometime. Usually kick it off with a big starter box of multiple forces. So far, I think the rumors are speculating it's going to be Tyranids and a Space Marine faction. Tyranids, for those that don't know, are basically aliens. So, that type of army. And then, of course, everybody knows the Space Marines.
Yep.
So that's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see that, to see the new box sets, to see the ongoing changes within their miniatures line. Every time they do these launches, it's an opportunity for them to update some of the older models. And surprisingly enough, they still have quite a few models from the late 80s, early 90s in there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Except
So, are your other armies obsolete, or are they compatible with the new rules?
So everything's fully compatible. One of the big controversies right now is they begin printing Primaris Marines. Obviously, Space Marines are their biggest seller. So how can I make more money? I'm going to make new versions of the biggest seller, and I'm going to sell those. So what they have now is they have the Primaris Marines that follow the new story arc, and then they have the older Marines that are still in the stories, but ultimately, I think those will start to trend out, and they've already started creating ways to narratively to start moving some of the more popular characters from the first generation Marines, moving them into Primaris. They pass the Rubicon, is what they call it, and they become the Primaris Marines, which have more, they're stronger, better, the newer version of the Space Marines. So it's just a new concept, and it's interesting. I'm kind of on the fence on that one with the Primaris and then the older generation Marines, but it's all part of that, them bringing back the Primarchs, which I talked about in our last episode. There's been rumors coming that another Primarch's going to come out. They just launched, I believe, last month, the Angron model, which is a Primarch for the Chaos side of the house. So there's 3 current Primarchs for Chaos, which is Mephiston. I'm totally wrong on that. That's the Blood Angels guy. See, I'm blowing it right now, and I'm the miniatures person.
No, that's good.
No. So I'm curious. So I know that you buy like these box sets of minis. You can buy individual minis. Are they going to be taking like legacy characters from the continuity and making mini versions of those to play as?
I believe so. Yeah, I really would think that's. I mean, honestly, Games Workshop is sitting on a gold mine. We've talked about it in previous episodes. Horus Heresy is hugely popular, and that's pretty much where the Primarch started, was Horus Heresy, and so how they literally can bring all of them back. Unfortunately, some died, so they're going to have some explaining to do. But seriously,
that's easy.
yeah.
Just do a multiverse. Everybody's doing them now.
Yeah,
or just pull a Star Wars.
Yeah, so
he came back somehow, and just leave it at that.
I'll just keep saying it. We are in a golden age, or a good age for hobbying and miniatures and action figures and even role playing. I mean, one of the questions I have to the group is, we touched on the D&D miniatures. What do you think of the new D&D movie that's coming out? We've got A-list celebrities, in this movie. I don't know. Is Chris Pine still an A-list celebrity?
Depends on whose list you're talking about.
So, yeah, but there's like this whole group of Hollywood people that game together.
Yeah, exactly.
And one thing that Games Workshop has going for it is a very jaded Henry Cavill. No matter how nice he's being about it or diplomatic, he's kind of pissed about getting stepped on with the. He was supposed to come back as Superman. Now that's tabled. So what do you think that having him involved with Games Workshop does for those guys?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm really actually very excited. I've actually listened to quite a few of his interviews, and he, even when he's not directly asked about Warhammer 40K,
He brings it up.
yeah, he'll bring it up on his own. And to me, that speaks to his passion for the hobby, for the lore. And he was actually approached in an interview one time, and I don't recall the interview, but he was actually asked, like, would you star in a Warhammer movie? And his response really was impactful because it's like the gist of the response was like, I don't think that it could be respectably recreated without having a real true fan behind the directors, in the director's seat.
I'm glad he understands that.
It is. It's really exciting, and it's even more exciting because he's currently working with Games Workshop and Amazon on creating the first TV series, well, Amazon streaming series. And I can't honestly think of anybody better to helm that project. That is a loyal fan that will.
Yep.
Yeah, that really does a lot for the exposure. And I was just thinking about when you asked about that D&D movie, everything about it reminds me of the new Willow series on Disney, which I slogged through. And I for the first time in a long time, I fast forwarded through an episode for good parts. But the only way that this movie really works is if when we get to the end of the movie and all of the actors are exposed as like sitting around the table playing and that's their characters. Otherwise, it just looks of horrible like
Exactly.
Xena and Hercules quality.
That's
But
the only way I'm going to accept that movie is if it ends on that note.
the one good thing, this will be the one good thing. This movie comes out, right? What happens when a big tentpole movie comes out that we might think sucks, but it's some old school property? Toys come. And toys come for the for the people watching this movie, but then toys come for us.
Yep.
So
So
I'm actually
toys have already started to show up for the movie. I don't know if you know that. So they've already shown pictures of the 6-inch versions of these characters, and
yeah, I
some
saw
of
them in
them
my
look
Target the other day.
really horrible. Like the face sculpts. Eek. You thought the Dolph Lundgren He-Man was bad? The what's her name, Michelle Rodriguez figure just looks like garbage. It's horrible.
A side note, Joy Toy, if you've ever heard of them, they're actually already producing Warhammer 40K action figures.
Oh,
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, so I definitely would, advocate, again, support the hobby, support these storylines if you're a toy collector and interested in these models or models as action figures. Please go check out Joy Toy. They've got a tremendous amount of products that you can look at and just kind of get a general idea of what Warhammer 40K is and what the concepts are. It is very grim dark. It's not a kid's show. It's not. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing. Is it's very adult. And I really do think it's a property that has tremendous support and a fan base. And I really think it could be the next big property. The next.
If it's handled right, it could be.
Absolutely, the next Harry Potter, the next. I don't.
Which I told you in a podcast before, we're on the verge of something big, another big shakeup in the pop culture world. So it could be this. It could be this thing that's coming. But Tony, I want to rack your brain on something. So as a tabletop gamer, I'm pretty sure you're aware of a lot of the things that the Wizards of the Coast has been doing lately, specifically towards content creators on YouTube and things like that, where people who have done a lot for the gaming community, like Critical Role and things like that, have done a lot of time and their own money and these things and bringing this entertainment to people. And now Wizards of the Coast is like, they want to control all that and they want to bring all that stuff back under their umbrella. And I think that they kind of missed the mark. Me personally, I think they kind of missed the mark on that because Dungeons and Dragons and the like are so heavily fan driven. Like you cannot have these things go without the fans. And this is just another step that the fans have taken in this online world where, they're showing these things like in YouTube and stuff, and these content creators are doing all these wonderful things. And now they're being they're being harnessed and they're being reined back by, you know, threats of being sued and things like having their channel removed. And so what do you think about that? I mean, how do you think that's going to affect the gaming community?
Man, that is a controversial situation. I am not in support of that by any means. They do the same thing in the Games Workshop arenas as well. They you know, really target those online creators. They make them sign NDAs. I get it. They want to protect their IP, and I understand that. But the issue that I have with all of these things, whether it's Warhammer, whether it's role playing, whether it's action figures, for the most part, this stuff started out, and maybe not action figures, I may overspeak on that, but for the hobby like role playing and miniature wargaming, it started out mom and pop style companies. It was, you know, Kevin Simbedia. It was, you know, those folks, you know, Five Guys started War Machine or whatever. It's a small property that was built by passionate people that loved what they were producing. And as time has gone on, these content creators, and this is all just my opinion, I don't want to stir up our base of, you know, our population that we're reporting to right now, but my take is that these are folks that were passionate about their projects. They put content out there. People like us spent our time and energy talking about it, promote, I don't think we at any point did content creators intentionally set out to market for them. They set out because they were passionate about their hobby, just like we are, and we want to talk about it with like-minded people and get feedback. What do you think? What are your thoughts? It's common. It's a social, at the end of the day, we're social creatures, and this is all just a social interaction with one another. It's a commonality, and it's a camaraderie. And I think what we're facing now is, as this product has spiraled and become very, very popular, it's far more popular than ever. I mean, we've talked about, I used to hide and not talk about playing Dungeons and Dragons in high school because you'd get your butt kicked. And now you're going to get your butt kicked if you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. So it's like total 180. And I'm excited. I'm glad that it's mainstream. But I am concerned because you have these major corporations like Hasbro. They're stepping in and they're purchasing small, well, that once were small shops like Wizards of the Coast. That you could go to like local cons. We have a con in the Tri-Cities called RadCon. And I got, when Magic the Gathering came out, I took some of my Magic cards there and we're getting autographs from the actual guys that drew the art and wrote the rules, because it was just a handful of people that built Magic. And now it's owned by Hasbro and they're charging ridiculous amounts of money for, you know, just sad.
Well, I remember back, you know, back in the day, and you know, this shows us how old we are. We're the old guys, right? Talking about this stuff. But I remember, you know, Gary Gygax and all of that, when he was talking about, you know, these games are just, you know, these books and these things we're putting out, these are just guidelines. We want you to go out and create so much more and do take this as far as you can take it and do whatever you can with it. And, you know, he loved the fans of Dungeons and Dragons. He wanted them to do things like that. And if there was a YouTube back in the day, he would have been all for that. But I see we've come back on this other side of the spectrum where it's like, now it's like you're hindering the fans more than enabling them.
But it's because of profit. They see this not as a hobby. It's not a passion. It's not something they're interested in. They see it as like, oh, this is the big thing right now. We're making a huge profit margin. We have got to maximize our sales potential.
Yeah, well, they're doing it the wrong way. I think they're alienating the fans, which is the last thing that you want to do on something like Dungeons and Dragons.
And yeah, it really, really surprised me to see Hasbro go the way of Disney, where they're attacking people who all they want to do is just spread the love of the franchise. They should be embracing it.
Yeah.
And the word would get out there even faster. It really surprises me that Hasbro did that, because when it comes to Transformers, which is one of their other big money makers, you have all kinds of third-party makers who are producing en masse figures and versions that they're never going to get to or they don't care about. And they've been really, really relaxed with that. They don't care about
Well, yeah,
the.
but I mean, can you imagine Hasbro trying to get the police to go to China and try to knock these third-party knockoff? I mean, it's an impossible thing. Yeah, I
It
don't
did
think they could rein
happen.
that in.
There was a few companies that got shut down, but I think it was more for show. But by and large, they just don't really touch it.
Mhm.
So to see them go full tilt Disney and try to shut people down because of IPO infringement, the way that you need to bond with these people and get
Exactly.
them on your side because they're the ones that are going to be going and waving the banner for you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that GW just started doing, and this is just coming out, and I don't have all the information on it, but they've actually been going after people on eBay, reselling their items.
What? Seriously?
Seriously, and
Going after somebody on the secondary market? Are you kidding me?
and that's crazy. I mean, they literally are targeting people for putting anything in their sales item, whatever you want to call it, on eBay that
Oh my gosh.
has their trademark information on it. And to me, the secondhand market is like the best place to go, especially for new gamers. I'm going to be able to buy this expensive product. I'm just getting into it. I don't want to spend a ton of money. Man, eBay is great. I'm going to go buy somebody's army that they're not interested in anymore. Or maybe they bought something they turned out didn't want it. I'm going to be able to buy this product for a cheaper price. I'm helping out the guy that bought it or the gal that bought it by getting them some money back. I got something at a cheaper price. What's that ultimately going to do? It's going to drive me to be interested in that product. I get addicted, or I don't want to say addicted, but it's true. We get addicted. And so
no, we're not addicted, are we?
No, I'm totally fine. I can quit anytime.
You got some of them Motu origins?
They're so short-sighted. Like you literally, by allowing a second market, allow people cheaper entry into your hobby who then are going to begin buying more product, which ultimately gains you money.
Yeah. Well, I see Wizards of the Coast backtracking pretty quickly pretty soon. I see that happening because you cannot do this on a fan level and expect the fans to continue to be a spokesperson for your product. You just can't do that. So I expect them to see a backlash from this. There's already a backlash. There's already a lot of people who are very angry about this. And unless they kind of backtrack on what they've been doing, it's going to get worse for them. That's what I see.
I'll be honest. I hope that's true, because Games Workshop, they're hard-headed and they do not backtrack often. And even when they do, it's not enough.
That being said, can't wait for the next Warhammer product.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll still buy your stuff.
Right on. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for our news segment. We're about to get booted off. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Tony for sharing some the tabletop gaming, and thanks to Steve for some news, and thanks to me for bringing this all up. So please like and subscribe our channel, listen to us, drop a comment, come visit us on Facebook on Steve and me for Instagram, and we'll see you online and in the toy lines.